Hey guys, in this video we're going to learn how to create an Electron application that uses SQLite for storing data locally on your machine. We will be building a to-do app from scratch, and after we finish it we will be creating a distributable so that we can send our installable app to our friends. So this is what we'll make, the super cool to-do app that always stays on top. It does everything you'd expect a to-do app to do. It lets you add tasks, mark them as complete, delete them, add them again. It is simple. However, by learning how to build it, you will unlock the ability to build awesome apps. Who knows, your app might be the one to change the world. This tutorial is intended for people who are familiar with Node.js. You don't have to be an expert, but you should know what Node.js is and you should have it on your computer. It's a prerequisite. All right, let's get started.
Let's begin by creating a new directory where our project is going to live. I'll call it to-do. Now let's open it in a code editor. I'll be using Visual Studio Code, but of course you can use any code editor you like. Now, the first thing we want to do is create an Electron application. We'll use Electron Forge to scaffold our app, as it is Electron's official scaffolding / building tool. Obviously, to create an Electron app, we'll need to make sure we have Node.js installed on our system, and we'll also need a package manager. I'll be using npm. Okay, now to create the app, I will copy this part of the command, fire up terminal, and then paste what we've just copied, which is npx create electron app at latest. Now, I would like to use the Vite template. So let's add -- template and set it to Vite. Now we want our app to be named after the directory we're in right now, and we also want it to be created in the directory we're in. To do this, all we gotta do is just add a period. Oh, look, Electron Forge already scaffolded our app for us. Now the dependencies are getting installed. As they install, I'd like to ask you to hit the like button if you find this video useful, and to subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already. Thank you. Cool, the dependencies are installed. Let's try to run our Electron app to see if everything works as expected. All right, our app runs as it should. Now let's install Better SQLite 3. As you can see, I'm on the npm website, and I'll just copy the installation command and paste it in terminal. The command is npm install better -SQLite 3. Better SQLite was installed. Let's try to run our application one more time and see if things work as they should. Let's hit enter and cross our fingers. If we get an error, I wouldn't be surprised. There is an error, unfortunately. Didn't get an error? You can skip to the next step. There was a function deprecated in the V8 engine, and as a result, this version of Better SQLite 3, the most recent one found on npm as I'm recording this video, doesn't work with Electron's most recent version. Hopefully, the patched version will make it to npm soon. For now, what we can do is downgrade our Electron app to a previous stable version. You could also download the most recent version from GitHub and then compile it and connect it to your project and use it. I've tried that. The newer version works just fine. However, it's much faster and easier to just downgrade Electron. So we can go with Electron 38.7. It is a stable version. As you can see, I'm on releases.electronjs.org, and as usual, I'm just gonna copy the npm install command and paste it. And now let's look at package.json and see the Electron version. It changed. Did you catch it? Hopefully that fixes things. Let's run our app again and see if everything works as it should. All right, it worked. Now, how about we change the title that shows on the title bar? Right now it says Hello World. We want it to reflect our app's name. So we can go to index.html and we can just write whatever we want inside the title tag. We'll write to do. Okay, it changed. One thing I like to do when I am creating the UI is to keep the window on top so that I don't have to minimize and maximize over and over. To do this, all you gotta do is just go to Main.js, which is in the source directory, and just add always on top and set it to true. And then restart the app. npm start. All right, now the window stays always on top. So let's go back to index.html. Let's change the title that shows here. Let's make it my to-do list, for example. And we'll probably want some kind of a button to allow us to add items to the to-do list. Plus task. And we can give it the ID add task button, for example. And we need a place to write what the task is, obviously. So let's create an input element, give it the ID task input, and placeholder, add new task, for example. We don't want this paragraph element. We can replace it with an unordered list. Give it the ID task list, for example. Now it looks like we have a super simple to-do list app, which does absolutely nothing. So let's change that. Let's begin by creating a directory where we'll keep all logic related to our database. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I personally recommend it because it keeps things organized and therefore makes the code much easier to understand and maintain. Inside our db directory, let's create a file where we're going to keep code related to creating the database and interacting with it. I'll call it database.js. Now let's create class app database. This class is going to be the single source of truth for all database operations within our app. Now the first decision we want to make is where to put our database. In Electron, by convention, file storing user data should be written in this directory being the user data directory. Getting the path to it is actually super easy. All we gotta do is use this method. So first we are gonna need to import app. I like to copy import statements from the main file, main.js I mean. So let's do that. Just copy and paste, and we don't need browser window, we just need app. Okay, so app.get path name, which is user data. Another import statement that we want to copy and paste from main.js is path. Because path.join will allow us to join the path to user data with our database's name in a cross-platform way. Let's call our database to do. So to do.SQLite. All right, next up we want to initialize the database. So let's import database from Better SQLite 3 and let's set this db to new database. And like we said, we want our database to be created inside the user data directory and we want it to be called to do SQLite. So let's just pass db path. And over here in red, it says, it is generally important to set the WAL pragma for performance reasons. So let's do that. I'll copy this code snippet that will set journal mode to wall. And I'll just type this dot and just paste the snippet. All right, now let's define setup database method. We'll want it to be called when an instance of app database is created. So let's add it to the constructor. We are going to want to first create a table and then create columns inside it. So exec would be perfect for this because it will allow us to write multiple SQL statements. So this .db.exec. Let's add backticks because we want to write multiple lines. So like we said, we want to create a table. So create table if not exists. And we want to call it tasks. Now let's add some columns. The first column you want to add is an ID column. Let's give it the type integer and make it a primary key and add the auto increment keyword. Okay, I'll just paste all of that. Okay, next let's create title column. We want it to be a text column and let's add not null. Okay, let's create completed to track if a task is completed. We'll make it binary, so let's give it the type integer. We also want to make sure it's never empty, and we want to set default. Let's set it to 0. Okay, now let's export app database. So export default app database, and let's import it in main.js. Of course, we will be adding more methods so that we'll be able to add tasks, delete them, mark them as complete. But first, I want to run the app again and make sure everything is working as expected. Actually, let's also add console log here, db initialized. Now let's import app database and let's create a mutable variable, call it db. And now let's scroll all the way to app when ready, and inside its event handler, let's initialize our database. db new app database. Alrighty, now let's restore our app and see if it works. Okay, so npm start. An error. Okay, so as you probably know better, SQLite 3 is a node module and it should not be compiled by Vite. Vite tries to compile it unless we tell it not to. So let's tell it not to. Let's go to vite.main.config and let's add build and then rollup options, and inside them external better SQLite 3. Now hopefully that should do it. Let's restore our app, try to run it again. Yay, it worked. Nice. Oh, now we can go to where userData is supposed to be and we can look for our database, see if it was actually created. Here's our database. It was created. And to view its contents, we can use a DB browser for SQLite. I'll click on Open Database and I'll just quickly find my database. Okay, here it is. Oh, look. Here's our tasks table, and inside it there is ID, title, and completed. All right, now let's go back to our database.js where we have our app database class defined, and let's add some methods to it. So we can add a task to our database, delete a task, mark a task as complete, and also get all tasks. All right, let's start with add task. Obviously, we're gonna need the task's title. Now let's prepare the statement. This.db, and we'll be using the prepare method. Make sure to use prepare and not exec, because exec can be extremely dangerous and lead to SQL injections. Okay, so we want to insert into tasks title and values question mark. The question mark serves as a placeholder. I forgot that const. All right, now we want to create another variable to hold the returned object. Let's call it info and set it to stmt.run. And we'll pass title. So run will get our statement executed. Now let's write the return statement. We want to return our tasks ID, info.last insert row ID. We also want to return the title, and a new task would not be completed. So let's have completed here and set it to 0. These will come in handy when we work on the renderer process. Now let's get working on delete task. Let's pass the task's ID, and let's make the SQL statement delete from tasks where ID is create const info and set it to statement.run, and we'll pass the ID. All right, now let's just add the return statement. Info.changes greater than 0. If there are changes, this will return true. Let's create the mark complete method. It should take ID and completed. Const statement this.db.prepare update tasks set completed where ID is question mark for placeholder. Now const info, let's set it to statement.run and we'll pass completed and the ID. Right, now let's return the same statement we've created for delete tasks. We just want it to return true if there are changes. Now finally, let's write get all tasks. Okay, so const statement db.prepare select from tasks order by ID descending. Return statement dot all. All will execute the SQL query defined in the statement and will return all the resulting rows, which is exactly what we want. Let's double check everything. Okay, so our column is called completed, but I wrote complete, which is a typo. It's incorrect. Okay, now the question is, how are we going to get those methods called from the front end or from the renderer process? The answer is through Electron's inter-process communication, which allows communication between the main process and the renderer process. So basically what we want to do now is set up a way for the renderer process to send requests to the main process. and have the main process receive this request and do the action intended. So how about we start by creating a mechanism that would listen and handle requests from the front end. In order to be able to receive requests from the front end and also send responses back, we'll be using ipcMain.handle. Our handlers that we'll create will be callable from the renderer process or the front end via ipcRenderer.invoke. I like to create a file for my handlers. Although you don't have to, you can just put your handlers in main.js right away, but I prefer to do this to keep my code organized. All right, let's import ipcMain from Electron. And how about we define a function to keep our handlers? So export default function. We can call it Setup handlers, for example. And let's have db be a param. Oh, now let's open database.js to the side to see what kind of handlers we want to create. So firstly, we want to create a handler for @task. So ipcMain.handle. And what name should we give the channel? We could call it tasks add. Okay, here we should add the arguments. The first argument is the event. We don't need to pass anything here, so leave it empty. But we will need the title for the @task method. Now let's write the return statement that will be also where we will be calling @task. So db.add_task and we'll pass title. Whatever value is returned by the handler function is automatically wrapped in a promise and sent back as a result of the ipcRenderer.invoke, which we're going to get to writing later on in the preload file. All right, we did @task. Let's create a handler for delete task. So ipcMain.handle. We want to listen on tasks delete. Let's also leave event as is and pass ID. And we want to return db.delete task. Super easy, right? We'll do the same for mark complete. So ipcMain.handle tasks mark complete. Oh, no event. Mark complete takes ID and completed. You can just write params. And we want to return db.markComplete. For here, we could also have b params. What else? Get all tasks. Same thing. ipcMain.handle and then tasks. Maybe you can make it get all, and we don't need to pass anything here. Return db.get all tasks. Okay, something is bothering me. We didn't add a close database method. I didn't do it. It's not your fault. Let's do it, since it's just not even one line of code. It's just so easy to do. Not closing the database while the app quits could cause bugs. All we gotta do is just type this .db.close and that should do it. We can add a console log to reassure ourselves. Okay. Now let's go to main.js And we want to do two things. We want to close our app and we want to call our Setup Handlers function to register all our IPC listeners. Let's add a db close first. We're looking for app on window all closed. Oh, it's right here. Okay, let's just add db close. Super easy, right? Okay, now let's scroll all the way up and let's import setup handlers. And all we gotta do now in order to register all those IPC listeners is just call the function, call setup handlers and pass db. As you can see, I made sure to call it after we have initialized the database within the app when ready event handler. All right, now it's time to go to Preload.js. Right, the first thing we want to do is import context bridge, which, like the docs say, creates a safe bidirectional synchronous bridge across isolated contexts. All right, so let's delete this and just import context bridge. I like to think of context bridge as a security gate between two worlds, isolated context and main world. Main world is the global environment where the renderer process executes. By default, what is defined in the main process stays in the main process along with Node.js APIs. And if we want renderer to be able to interact with it, then we need to create the necessary API interface. I like to think of the preload script as the API front-end interface and of the handlers in main process as the backend API logic. By the way, the first argument API, that's a string name that you choose for the property that context bridge will create on the renderer's global window object. So you can call it whatever you want. API is just the convention, and I think it makes sense. Alrighty, now back to business. We'll be using ipcRenderer.invoke, which sends a message to the main process via channel and expects a result asynchronously. ipcRenderer.invoke and ipcMain.handle work together so well. Invoke calls from the renderer process, while handle listens for calls, gets stuff done in the main process, and returns a result back. All right, let's start by importing ipcRenderer. And now in this object, we want to create the methods that will correspond with the handlers in the main process. Actually, let's define const API and just pass it. I feel like this is more readable. Let's start with add tasks. So add task. We need to pass title. So title, then ipcRenderer.invoke. We want to invoke tasks add and pass in title. Okay, next, tasks delete. So delete task, we'll pass ID, ipcRenderer.invoke, and we want to invoke tasks delete, and we'll pass ID. Then mark complete. We want to pass params, and we'll be invoking tasks mark complete, and it takes the argument params. Finally, get all tasks does not take any arguments. ipcRenderer.invoke tasks get all, and that is it. Now we're ready to start adding interactivity to our to-do list that currently does nothing at all. Okay, so let's go to Renderer.js. Let's delete all of this and also this console message. And now let's open index.html to the site. So the first thing we want to do is get references to the elements we want to interact with. Task input document.get element by ID. And we want to get task input. We also need add task button and task list. Okay, I forgot to add const. Okay, the first thing we want to do is make it possible to add tasks, right? So let's listen on the add task button. Let's add an event listener to it. So add task button dot add event listener, and we want to listen on click. And on click, we want stuff to happen. So we're going to create a function called handle add task. Let's start defining it. It's going to be an async function. So const handle add task async. First, we want to get what was inputted in this input field, right? Let's create variable title and set it to task input dot value dot trim. Trim will remove extra white spaces. Now, all we gotta do in order to get this input saved in our database is add a satisfyingly easy line of code. So await window dot API dot add task, and then we gotta pass the title, and that should do it. So let's try. I know, we didn't create a way to render the tasks in our UI, but we'll be able to see if anything was added through DB browser for SQLite. So let's try. Since we're gonna need to render the to-do list, we can add render to-do list as a task, right? Okay, let's hit the button. Okay, I don't see errors. That's a good sign. Okay, let's check the database. Okay, there is a task that was added, see? So let's see if it says what we've just typed in. Let's click on tasks. Oh, yay, it does. Render to-do list. So let's do that. Let's render the to-do list. Let's define our render tasks function. It's gonna be an async function, and we don't need any params. Now, what we want is to get the tasks from the database. So let's create const tasks, and let's set it to await. And let's open Preload to cheat a bit. Oh, let's put it here. Okay, so await window dot API dot get all tasks. And that's it. That's how we get tasks from the database. Now, we want to show the tasks on our UI. So tasks dot for each task. We want to create a list element for each task. So let's create const li for list. Set it to document dot create element, and we want to create a list element, and we want that list element to have the task's title as its text content. So task dot title. Finally, we want to append the list element to task list. So task list dot append child li. Okay. Now let's have our Electron app in view and call the function to see what happens at the moment of truth. Render tasks. Ta-da, it worked! High five! Which means we can mark it as complete. So let's create a way to do that. Let's add a checkbox next to each task. So const checkbox, set it to document dot create element, and we want to create an input element, and we want to give it the type checkbox. You know what? How about we make it so that the checkbox is a child of the list element? To do this, we are going to move title into a span element that then will append to the list element. So let's create a span element. Const title span. That's set it to document.create element span. And now we want the span element to display the title that was previously in the list element. And then we want to make the span element a child of the list element. So list dot append child title span. Okay, cool, it worked. And now we also want to have the checkbox be the child of the list elements. So list dot append child checkbox. Okay, cool. Here it is. Now we want the checkbox to reflect the value of the completed column in our database, right? So let's set checkbox dot checked to not task dot completed. Exclamation mark will convert the database's 1 or 0 into a true or false. Check this out. Let's remove 1 exclamation mark. It became ticked. But it should be unticked because right now the value is 0. Now we want to add an event listener that will fire when we click the checkbox, right? When the value of the checkbox changes. So checkbox dot add event listener. I want to listen for change. And now let's create an async function. Don't need params, thank you. Because on change, we want to call the API to update the database. So await window.api mark complete. And we need to pass ID and completed. So let's set ID to task.id. And for completed, we want to check if checkbox is checked. If it is, we want to send 1. If it's not, we want to send 0. Right, now let's check if that works. So yeah, as you see in our database right now, it shows 0. Let's check the checkbox and refresh. Oh, it's 1. Now let's make the delete functionality. Let's create const delete button and set it to document.create element. And we want to create a button, right? And just like with title span, we would like to append that button to our list element, right? So our list.append child and we'll append the delete button. Here it is. So delete button dot text content. How about we just add a trash can emoji? Yeah, that works, right? Or just a cross. Yeah, like this. Yeah, I like the red cross. It will do for now. Now we want this button to work. So let's add an event listener. Can listen on click. So delete button dot add event listener, click. And on click, we want to trigger an async function with await window.api delete task. And we need to pass the task ID. So task.id. Right, I think this should do it. So let's try. Let's click on the delete button. But before we do, let's bring up the database. Okay, ready? Let's click delete and let's refresh. Ta-da, it worked. Okay, but our UI wasn't updated. Okay, so let's get our UI to update when we add a new task or when we delete a task. Let's start with getting it to update when we add a new task. Remember how we defined the function responsible for adding a task before we defined the function for rendering the tasks? Well, we need to move the function because after adding a task, we're gonna need to render the updated task list. So to do this, all we have to do is add render tasks to our handle add task function. So as soon as we add a task to the database, we call the render task function. And this way, hopefully, our UI would get updated after we add. Let's try it. Okay, I'm super thirsty, so I'll add drink water as a task. Okay, it updated. You see that? That was cool, right? Now let's try to add another task and see what happens. Let's first tick this task. Let's try to add another task. Let's make it finish fixing the UI. Okay, let's click. Okay, you see how drink water appeared twice? That's not because it's saved twice in the database. Let's double check. Let's refresh. No, there's only one drink water. So why did it update twice? That's because we're not clearing the UI before we add the updated list. So the tasks are added on top of the tasks that were already there. So to fix this, let's just clear it. So let's set task list dot inner HTML to empty quotation marks to an empty string. And that should do it. Let's try adding a new task. Hopefully this will go well and we'll be able to celebrate later. So let's add celebrate as a task. Wishful thinking. Oh, cool. It worked. Okay. Now let's get the UI to update when we delete something. Okay, so let's delete drink water since I've already accomplished this task. So I'll click on it, and if we refresh, we're not going to see drink water. Yeah, it's not there. Okay, so let's fix this problem. All you have to do is just add render tasks inside the callback function. This way, when we delete a task, the updated task list will be fetched, and our UI will get the updated task list. That's it, I guess. Okay, so how about we go back to main.js and let's comment out open DevTools so that DevTools are no longer open. I feel like our app would be better without the menu over here. To remove the menu, we'll use a class menu. We'll need to import it, and we just need to add this method to the create window function before the browser window is created. And instead of menu here, we'll pass null. I think I kind of like having a to-do app that is always on top. I feel like this could be useful. So I'm thinking of leaving always on top true. I like it. But I feel like the window is very big. So let's try making it half that size, 400, 300. Let's refresh. Let's restart the app and see how that looks. So Control C and then npm start. I like it. It is so cute. wait, let's look at the CSS file, which by the way was created by Forge for Electron Forge. We didn't create it. Let's try removing the padding or just commenting it out. What if we try to make it padding inline start? It's good enough. All right, I feel like it would be criminal to put all that work and not make a distributable. So how about we run npm run make to create an installer for our app. So Control C. Now let's run npm run make. Forge will create an installer for us. It's system sensitive. So if you're working on a MacBook, it's going to make an installer for Mac OS. If you're on Linux, it will create an installer for Linux and so on. I don't know if you've noticed, but the out directory appeared, and that's where our installer is gonna be. So let's reveal in File Explorer. I think in Make there is the installer, and over here there is the .exe file. Okay, let's double click it. An error. Okay, if this error shows up to you when you run the executable, you'll also see it when you run the installer. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with this error. It says a JavaScript error occurred in the main process on caught exception. Cannot find module better SQLite 3. Luckily, there are awesome people out there, and someone posted a solution to this issue, an issue that people all over the world are experiencing and have been experiencing for a while, since Electron 7.3 something. Right now we're at Electron Forge 7.10 and the bug is still there. So here's the issue. Expected behavior. When creating a new project and installing a native dependency, the native node binding should be available in the resources app.asar unpacked directory. Actual behavior, the app.asar unpack folder does not exist. The native bindings are not in the app.asar either. This issue is known to happen when you use Electron Forge along with the Vite template, and then you try to use any native plugin or package such as Better SQLite 3. To get everything working as they should, all we have to do is just add this to our forge.config file. So I'll just copy the whole thing and replace what I have here and then add icon again. We're not using TypeScript, so we don't need the type here. Okay, let's add our icon again. So icon. Right, now let's delete the out directory. If it doesn't let you delete it, just go to Task Manager and hit Control F and write the name of your app and then end task. Now we should be able to delete the out there. Okay, it's gone. All right, round 2. Are you ready? npm run make. Okay, let's go. The moment of truth. Once more. All right, so reveal in File Explorer. Okay, let's try the exec file first. It worked. Okay. Let's try adding a new task and seeing what happens. I'm so sleepy. It's very late. So my next task is go to sleep. All right. It worked. This counts as celebrating, right? We're happy everything works. We're gonna be able to send this app to our friends. Right, so let's try. Oh, and we finished fixing the UI too, so we can delete it. Yay, it works. Our app works. So yeah, like we said, there is the executable, and there is an installer here. The installer is the one you want to send your friends. Awesome possum. Our installer worked, which means I can go to sleep, but I don't think I should go to sleep. Maybe I should take it tomorrow. All right, so good night. See you tomorrow. Yo, guess what? It is tomorrow. And you know what? Our app is right here. The installer made a desktop shortcut. I actually didn't notice that yesterday. Let's double click on it. Ta-da! Now we can go to sleep and delete it. We can also delete celebrate. And yeah, my next to do is to wish you all a happy day wherever you are. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video and you found it useful. As usual, if you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments. See ya. Bye. Wait, I forgot to ask you to like the video and subscribe. So, like the video and subscribe. Thank you. Bye.